Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lauren. I'm here with the Dion leadership team. Today, we are going to be talking about resilience and well-being. Our panelists are Pamela and Julie, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Steve Dion, to get us started this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us today for a topic that's near and dear to our hearts is resilience and well-being. And we titled this The Science of Happiness and It's Important to Productivity. We created this webinar based on a recent three-part training series we developed on this topic. We know that the current business environment is forcing a lot of us to become more agile, to do things differently than we had before, juggling many things in our personal and our professional lives. And in the leadership development space, this topic is now becoming more and more popular as something that organizations want to teach. And so we're happy to be part of that. We know that employees can bounce back quicker from adversity when they're collaborating more. They can collaborate more, be more productive, and have a lot less risk, health issues, stay with an organization. So we're delighted to add this topic to our training catalog, and I'm joined by two panelists today who I'm going to learn from, Pam and Julie, and I'll introduce them right now, and they will help us guide us through what we're going to do today. What I do want to say as we go through this, for those of you that have joined other webinars that we've had in the past, and I say this up front, but for this one, I really do mean, we really want this as interactive as possible. So please pull up your chat box throughout the webinar. Feel free to chat. There'll be times when Pam and Julie are going to be asking for some more commitment from you and participation, and it'll just make it a more rich session for you, because part of what we're trying to accomplish here is not just having you understand how you might bring this into your organization, but for you to practice these skills yourself. So Pam, Julie, and I have worked together to create our resilience program for a COVID-19 first response team for a large hospital system. And since then, I've learned a great deal about this topic, and it really is coming from the experiences that they both bring. Julie graduated from the UC Berkley Science of Happiness program, which is where she brings a lot of wealth to the table today. And Pam similarly graduated from a different program at Yale University called the Science of Well-being. Prior to coaching and consulting, Julie had a successful career in corporate HR as an executive, and she focused on leadership development, change management, and organizational development activities. So this has always been part of her activities as well. And she's also done some work with a positive psychology group at the University of Michigan. Pam brings a unique perspective and a different perspective to this, because she started her career as a neonatal nurse, and she was an administrator in a large hospital system doing professional development work there. And she's somebody who experienced burnout and fatigue herself, which she'll be sharing today as well, and specializes really in the compassion fatigue area within this. So I'm grateful to have both of them to bring to the table some very unique experiences and some deep subject matter expertise. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for that warm intro.
Oh, yes. You're welcome. So just 3 or 4 minutes on why the subject and how it fits into the other work that we do. So our why at Dion Leadership is that we want every employee to start every day excited and end every day accomplished. And we have a great team of coaches and consultants that do this work regularly. And we've been saying for many years that the science of bringing your whole person to the organization is critical for getting business results. And I'm happy to report now that CEOs understand that after going through the coronavirus pandemic and really realizing firsthand what that looks like. So for us, we want to be able to bring this in many shapes, forms to the way we train, coach, and develop people. And some of our solutions that we work with right now are on the screen here. So this idea of resilience and well-being has forever kind of followed through leadership coaching. On a one-on-one level, we've always coached executives who are in high burnout jobs, how to deal with burnout, resilience, setbacks. It's now moving into these leadership development programs, though, which I'm excited to be able to share as part of a catalog, and in team effectiveness programs, not just working with the team about how do we grow the team's ability to perform, but be more vulnerable. And vulnerability has been a really important element. And then organizations are even assessing talent now for their ability to have the skills that they need to bounce back and be resilient. And then, of course, OD work, it's there. So it's really woven into all the different activities and things that we do. Many of the clients you see on the screen here are large healthcare organizations. You'll see large global manufacturing organizations, a variety of companies that frankly are pretty advanced in the space of talent management and understanding the importance of bringing the whole person to the organization. And we've partnered with many of them on topics like this, and many of them are having these conversations, either have their own internal wellness program and set of activities and practices that they bring every day, and or helping us or having us come in and teach them some of these skills and activities. And then last, and then I'll turn it over to Julie, these are our session goals for today. So we particularly want to have you leave this hour with a better understanding of what do we mean by the word resilience. It's so easily used and thrown around without a lot of thought to it. And then particularly help you identify very specific strategies for how you cope with ambiguity, and at an individual and organizational level, how you can help the organization do that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to turn off my camera, turn it over to them to lead you through this time, and then I'll come back at the end to summarize. Julie?
Great. Thank you, Steve. So what makes some people fold under pressure while others seem to bounce back effortlessly? So today we're going to explore the concept of resiliency for both individuals and organizations.
And our conversation today will start with a well-established 4-part model for building resiliency based upon awareness, exposure, recovery, and mindset. And as we dig into this model, we really will provide you with an awareness of resiliency and the value that it can serve you. And we will look at and provide an understanding, a better understanding of exposure. From there, we'll talk about how we can recover from these events, and then focus on a healthy mindset that you can adopt and help sustain your practice. From there, we'll move on to focus on resiliency in organizations, and we'll share ideas on how to make your organization become more resilient.
So let's begin by defining resiliency. Resiliency is withstanding the impact of what's going on in your life and having the capacity to bounce back from adversity quickly. Understanding how stress causes damage and recovery brings repair. So the more prepared you are to start with, the stronger ability you have to bounce back from a traumatic event and be better equipped to deal with the next storm. So we're going to watch a brief 2-minute video on resiliency from the Human Performance Institute.
When you think about the word resiliency, to a lot of people it has different meanings. There's flexibility, which means range of motion, but resiliency means a lot of different things. For example, it can mean how quickly you bounce back from adversity. You get the emotional hit in the face, but you're tough enough that you can withstand it. You've got the capacity. Resiliency is a combination of the two. Number one, withstanding the impact of whatever's going on in your life. But number two, then, once you've withstood that impact, bounce back, get back on your feet, and get into the fight again.
Resiliency is maybe one of the most important assets that we have as human beings. It's really the acquired ability to fully marshal all of the strategic value in recovery, to be able to understand that there are stresses in our lives, and then there is a healing component that must occur. We must marshal the forces of strategic recovery so that we can renew capacity and actually build new capacity physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually following a significant stress event. When an event pushes us, the death of a family member, a loss of a job, these are massive, in a sense, injuries that occur. What resiliency, the capacity for resiliency does, helps us to metabolize that. Just like you break an arm or a leg, there is a healing that must occur to balance that injury so that I can go forward in the future and actually have full functionality, maybe actually be stronger than I was if the rehabilitation was a good process. So it really does involve understanding how stress causes damage and recovery brings repair. That same process occurs emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. That resiliency is speed of recovery. The stronger you are, the faster you can take a hit from a storm and be fully functional again, and actually may have actually gained ground in terms of your ability to fight and gain strength for the future. Resiliency is maybe one of the most important cornerstones to our ability to navigate in the new world we face, because we are constantly bombarded by things that kind of knock us off our normal perch, and we have to rebound quickly, and then we have to go forward again, better equipped to deal with the next storm.
Excuse me. So, we used to think that our brain functions were fixed. But through the research that has been done on neuroplasticity over the past 40 years, we now know that our brains are flexible and can grow and change in response to the experiences. We can actually cultivate our brain to respond rather than to simply react. And that's through mindful observation and practice.
So what does that look like?
Well, it starts with emotional regulation. Did you know that when we become emotionally charged, it takes us 90 seconds to return back to our baseline? And without this emotional regulation, we are less efficient and less functional. As leaders, it's important for us to model the way for employees.
So how do I do this in times of uncertainty when there's constant change?
Well, the first step in the resilience model is awareness. And just having awareness of your emotions allows you to respond in a healthy and productive way. Our emotions impact our brain and our thinking. When we are in stressful situations and we are feeling overwhelmed, we begin to use our limbic brain, or sometimes called emotional brain. And this pandemic is creating stressors for many due to uncertainty, and this has the emotional brain taking over by causing anxiety about our health, our family's health, the economy. We lack connectiveness with each other. When our prefrontal cortex is not functioning well, we tend to be less aware, less compassionate, and be more irritable and have sleep issues. So this is the first opportunity that we wanted to actually ask, is what we've said thus far resonating with anyone? Please use the chat box and share if this is resonating with you so far. Great. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Melanie. Yes, having an awareness of our emotions can really help us share with others what we're feeling and then responding in a helpful and productive way. One thing that we know that works well when you find your emotions getting a grip on you is to use a tool called STOP. It is a mindfulness-based practice, and it's an acronym where S stands for stop what you're doing and pause. Take a breath. O, observe your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions. And then P, proceed with something that will support you in the moment so that you can move forward.
So by simply labeling our emotion, we change our brain activity from the limbic brain, or our emotional brain, to our prefrontal cortex, or our thinking brain. Labeling an emotion will create a distance between yourself and the intensity of the emotional reaction. Experiencing strong emotions are natural, especially during unprecedented times like this. Sometimes when we're feeling a strong emotion, like fear or anger, we want to ignore it or avoid the emotion and just push through it. But labeling emotions are important, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed. When we allow ourselves to be in the grip of a strong emotion, we enter the refractory period, which is a period of time when we only take in information that confirms and maintains or justifies the emotions we're feeling. This can distort our ability to take in new information and thus negatively impact our performance. So having a mindset of, how can I manage my fear so that it doesn't negatively affect my work performance, can help reframe the emotion and your reaction to it. So when you're in the middle of a stressful situation, pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is it anger, fear, sadness? What sensations am I feeling physically? Is my jaw clenched? Is my heart racing? Is my back tight? So using the chat box, type in a physical response that you have when you're in a stressful situation. Yes, tension shoulders, heart racing, back tightens, absolutely.
That's a little bit like I'm feeling right now. But it's good stress today, good stress. We all have the ability to choose how we think and how we feel in response to these stressors, because our thoughts drive our stress response. In that moment, ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen right now? And can I do anything to change this situation? Some phrases to use with yourself are, it's okay, I'm human. It's just a matter of time and it will pass. And definitely what we've heard together is we will get through this together. These phrases can become mantras for you that you can repeat to yourself throughout the day. And if you notice, I put your phrase. What is your phrase that you can use when feeling fearful or stressed? Use the chat box now and let us know. Please share some of the phrases that you've felt and you've used when you're feeling fearful or stressed. In this moment, I'm okay. Wonderful. Mark tells us to just breathe. Absolutely. Thank you. Game time. I like that. 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Those are great. Many people have been dealing with the stressors of ambiguity over the past 5 months. Our brains are wired to view ambiguity as a threat. And for many of us, this pandemic has triggered the fight or flight response due to the anxiety it has provoked. Did you know that anticipating a stressful event, such as losing a job, is actually more harmful to your physical health than losing your job? Stress that is prolonged could have a negative impact on both physical and mental health. Neuroscience tells us there are 2 paths for stress in the brain: challenge or threat. Challenge feelings occur when you feel you have enough resources to cope with the situation. In contrast, when you feel the situation is too demanding, exceeding your resources, you experience threat. So when we look at our body on stress through this lens, the challenge stress response is enhanced physical health, more favorable emotions, and higher performance. On the other hand, the threat stress response produces negative physical health, less favorable emotions, and lower performance. Some of the key essentials for stress resilience are staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, and social connections. Research shows that peer support is also one of the most important factors in dealing with stress.
And having some of this stress in our lives is normal. When handled appropriately, it can help us to become more resilient. Stress can motivate us and hold ourselves accountable for those actions. So knowing this, we can see that some stress is not an obstacle, but as a tool for growth. The key takeaway here is that when we shift our mindset and rethink stress, we can choose our response, and this can build up resilience. And that leads us to the second step in the resiliency model of exposure. Feeling like we are in control is a really strong influence for well-being. And having influence allows us to be proactive and reduces the impact of long-term stress. Choosing to focus on what we can control may create a reaction that changes things that you cannot control directly. Focus on what matters, what you can actually influence. So I want us to take a minute and grab a pencil and a piece of paper if you haven't already, because what we'd like to do now is to name a current stressor in your life. What is a current stressor in your life? Now list 3 things that you can control about that stress and 3 things that you can't. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. 3 things that you can control and 3 things that you can't. Have you had enough time to think about that? Sometimes in situations, it's really good to concentrate on what you can control, because focusing on things you can't control will only drain your energy. You want to keep your energy level really consistent so that you can be your best both personally and professionally. So if you didn't think of anything during this time, please go back and spend some time on a stressor and what you can control and not control. Because stressors are uncomfortable, and by using various strategies we'll talk about, such as deep breathing, you can train yourself to overcome them with practice and patience. So before we move to the next slide, I have one more thing that I'd like for you to do. With those things that you could not control, you can't control, that are out of your control, I want you to put a big X on. Focus on what matters, what you can control.
So sometimes when I'm stressed, I think back to a similar situation and reflect on what I did then to help me get through it. And that past exposure helps me to remember how to move forward. And it reminds me that that situation was temporary. One recent example is a situation that I had with my teenage son. And for those of you who either currently have teenagers or have had teenagers, you may be able to relate. My frustration level was high, and in that moment, I paused, I took a few deep breaths, and I reminded myself, this moment will soon pass. So instead of escalating my emotions by responding to his actions, which would have then escalated the situation even more and left us both feeling frustrated and upset, in that moment, I made a different choice. I was intentional about making a choice that would help our relationship and not hurt it. So think about that stressor that you listed a few minutes ago. Think about what is a strategy that you can use to help you effectively deal with that stressor.
Thanks, Julie. That leads us to recovery, which is the third step of the resiliency model, where the focus is on renewal. We live in an environment where work and activity are viewed as a badge of honor, and we don't often take time to focus on renewal. We're so busy. We ask ourselves, how can I rest when I have so many things to do? And instead we choose to push through, which may lead to negative long-term effects on us physically, psychologically, and emotionally. And it can also harm our working relationships and our personal relationships. The reality is that we all need time to recover from our 24/7 pace and the stressors at work, home, and specifically now, the impact that the pandemic is having on all of us. Whether it be a few minutes of meditation or a high energy cycling class, whatever works best for you, those are the things that you make time for regularly to help with those periods of stress. One strategy that I've implemented recently during this stressful time is to take a media diet. In today's 24/7 news coverage, I really have to limit my time watching TV or looking through social media. I have to ask myself, is this helping or harming me? And many times I realize it's increasing stress and it's not useful or healthy. So I chose and I choose today something that helps me recover from stressors, which is connecting with friends on the phone or taking a walk outside with my dog. Recovery strategies can really be a few minutes for a minor stressor like deep breathing, or longer for a more intense stressor like spending a weekend with family and completely disconnecting from work. A short recovery strategy you can use at work is to give yourself a 5-minute break between meetings and use that time, if you're not walking, to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. If we continuously jump from meeting to meeting, then our energy level becomes depleted. And that is not something we want to have happen before the day is over. Other recovery strategies include meditation, journaling, setting your positive intent for the day, whatever works best for you. I used journaling when I was going through cancer 13 years ago, and it helped me reflect then and now on the choices that I have made for my own well-being and my resiliency. So we invite you now, using the chat box, to share a strategy that's worked for you. It can be from a short-term stress or for something that impacts you longer periods of time. Anyone want to share? Talking to trusted friends. Yeah, visualization and meditation. Listening to guided imagery, meditation. Excellent, thank you. Fact hygiene, data diet. Oh, wonderful. Very good. I might have to steal that one. Riding my bike. Nature is best for me. Lori, thank you. Nature brings soothing, calm, and peace. Absolutely. Daily prayer, exercise, listening to music. Okay, easy listening or disco. Both of them can bring recovery and renewal. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you. The fourth and final step of the resiliency model involves mindset. As we mentioned earlier, we know that our brains are flexible and can grow and change in response to experiences. A mindset refers to whether you believe qualities such as intelligence and talent are fixed or changeable traits. Your mindset plays a critical role in how you cope with life's challenges. A person with a fixed mindset believes that these qualities are inborn, fixed, and unchangeable, whereas someone with a growth mindset believes that these abilities can be developed and strengthened through commitment and hard work. When facing a problem such as coping with a pandemic, people with the growth mindsets show greater resilience. They're more likely to persevere in the face of setbacks, while those with the fixed mindsets are more likely to give up. Carol Dweck has done extensive research on the growth versus fixed mindset, and she shares strategies on how to cultivate a growth mindset in her book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. The resilient mindset is all about learning and taking positive action time and time again. It's about bouncing back from setbacks and overcoming difficulties. So think back to that stressor that you listed earlier. How are you talking to yourself about that stressor? Are you using a negative tone with yourself as you think about it? If so, think about some ways you can reframe that stressor in a more positive way. So take a moment to think about that. What we know from the science of happiness is that self-compassion produces many benefits. Self-compassion is a topic that's been researched extensively by Kristen Neff, a professor at the University of Texas. Her research shows that when we have higher levels of self-compassion, we have lower levels of anxiety and depression. But many of us don't take the time for self-compassion because we have a tendency to associate it with being selfish or even lazy. But taking those small steps, such as replacing our harsh inner critic thoughts with kind and supportive thoughts, can lead to better psychological and physical effects. Self-compassionate people cope more effectively with life stressors.
We have talked about resilience in individuals and shared some strategies. Now let's shift our focus to how this relates with what organizations are doing for their employees around resilience. Many executives are seeing the value, as Steve mentioned earlier, about creating a culture of resilience among their organizations, and some have done very good work in those areas. While this concept's been written about for many years, it's become even more prominent over the past few months with the pandemic. Some of the research that Harvard Business Review shows that organizations that are more resilient and flexible will be more successful during times of uncertainty. And when leaders go through a hardship, such as the current pandemic, it can provide opportunities for growth in the following ways. It can increase their self-awareness by experiencing these limitations, beliefs, and skill sets that they may not have recognized otherwise. It can help them to become more compassionate by seeing firsthand what their team members and others outside the organization are dealing with. And it helps them to become more resilient. As we mentioned in the exposure part of the resiliency model, surviving hardships allows leaders to become more agile in dealing with future challenges.
Yes, leaders play a large role in creating the right climate to really make resilience possible among their employees. An example of how a leader could do this would be redistributing workloads among the team members based on individual needs so that the employee can feel better supported with family and life commitments. So using the chat box, would anyone like to share what their organization is currently doing to create a climate for resilience?
Well, I know one that was shared with me earlier today, Julie, is around what Dr. Neff had been working on, and that's compassion. Oh, and Melanie
And
just wrote
Melanie.
in. We're all on the same mindset. Excellent. Yes, when you can take a moment to breathe in self-compassion, pause, and then breathe out compassion for your client, for your colleague, for a family member, then you are becoming more resilient, and everyone around you that experiences that also becomes more resilient.
Absolutely. Oh, virtual group coaching and leadership conversations to normalize, collaborate, and strategize as colleagues. That's perfect, Lori, because that's actually the next thing I was going to talk about is that customized individual coaching has been shown to significantly increase resilience among employees. And coaching can be done by the leader, it could be a peer or an outside consultant. And one of the benefits of a coach is that they're objective and they can help the employee by using the current challenges of COVID to remind them to focus on their own well-being. Another way for leaders to support their employees is to help them understand and accept the reality of a situation. That can sometimes be a difficult task because as leaders, we sometimes want to sugarcoat what's really going on because we don't want our employees to become upset or even overly pessimistic. And we all know that denial is an easier route as it is a coping mechanism. But facing reality allows us to create solutions that will help our team and ultimately the organization move forward. During challenging times, it's important for a leader to have clear and consistent communications with their employees while also showing empathy. Leaders need to show their human side. So language using possibilities and resilience will help the team to create a growth mindset. So we mentioned earlier the importance of peer support. Resilient organizations are cultivating relationships in a variety of innovative ways. They're doing things like virtual coffee hour, or intentionally having pets or children on Zoom calls once a week, and putting signs on the lawn for team members to show appreciation or to celebrate an anniversary or a birthday.
Yes, that's usually my cue for my cat, Katie, to walk across the computer, but you can't see her. So research has also shown that finding meaning helps us with resilience. Companies find meaning by relying on their values when going through times of uncertainty, and these values act as a core to the foundation of an organization, and they don't change. Other companies have a noble purpose that has meaning beyond being profitable, and the organization values are more important than individual resilience in times of crisis because the values guide behaviors. Without them, employees may behave in ways that are in conflict and can hurt the organization. So leaders who are driven by purpose find meaning in what they do every day. They can articulate the answer to the why question and know that their purpose builds resilience. It also cultivates curiosity and empathy, being able to be in someone else's shoes, right? And the stability within that organization. All are needed attributes today. So we'd like to know, over the past 6 months, have you seen the positive effects of leaders within your organization, specifically around resiliency and well-being? And I'll pause for just a moment for you to share. And actually, that's right. We put down here a nice polling time instead of questioning. And looks like 100% are answering. 100%, wonderful. So good to see. Have some amazing leaders out there helping us. Great, thank you.
That is great, because we are seeing a shift in mindset with executives. And the CEO really sets the tone for the organization. And some are being intentional with a to-be list instead of a to-do list. And things like chief well-being officers are being added to the executive suite, and many of them have PhD and MD credentials. So wellness has become a business strategy that can be used to increase employee retention, improve productivity, allow for greater collaboration, and less absenteeism. Executives realize that creating a company culture with a wellness mindset will not only benefit employees emotionally, but physically as well. There's a cost benefit too. When employees are healthy physically and emotionally, there are less chronic healthcare issues, which equate to less insurance costs. Companies that are successful with their wellness initiatives are intentionally linking them to their overall company strategy. Wellness then becomes integrated within the organization through leadership messaging, communications, and policies. The wellness mindset is translating into companies' learning curriculum, and companies are using a variety of modalities such as self-paced learning, video vignettes, lunch and learns, and virtual training options. Topics like stress management, work-life balance, and conflict management have now become the norm with learning offerings. An example of a company that's leading the way with employee wellness programs is Johnson & Johnson, and their focus is more about a healthier lifestyle, including helping employees to manage their energy to increase productivity at work and at home. Other companies are also looking at a broad approach to wellness, including components such as sleep, nutrition, exercise, disconnecting from technology, gratitude, and purpose. According to a recent Harvard Business Review article, the future of work will include developing a stronger focus and a more holistic view of employee well-being, one that encompasses the emotional, mental, and spiritual health of workers, along with the physical. So learning new skills about wellness and resilience will continue to be crucial for companies and their employees, especially during times of crisis. So I'm curious, using the chat box, how many of your organizations have had a greater focus on well-being over the past 6 months?
Maybe you're thinking about that just a little bit. We know that with a resilient mindset, you can be intentional in how you think and behave during stressful events. And as we close today, we'd like to leave you with a mindful strategy using some guided meditation. So I'm going to go through a meditation with you, and then we'll hand it back to Steve to finish up for our day. So I invite you to take a deep breath. And when you're comfortable, begin to close your eyes or look downward. And I wonder if you would take a moment to imagine yourself being more calm, more peaceful, and more focused. And as you allow your unconscious mind to naturally conjure an image of what that would feel like, consider what you might be seeing. What you might be hearing. and what you might be feeling. That shows you that you're more calm, peaceful, and focused. And perhaps you're already feeling more calm, peaceful, and focused. If not, it's okay. Notice that your unconscious mind can reveal how you might do this at a later date. Now, maybe you can think of a simple way to incorporate this feeling of calm into your life in the days and weeks ahead. And know after you have done that, know that it really can be this easy to create a little more peace and calm in your life. So I invite you now to take a good, deep cleansing breath and begin to move your attention back into the room, noticing the sounds around you and what you might see as you open your eyes. So I thank you for spending time with us. Julie and I have had a wonderful experience together bringing this to you today, and now we'll pass it on to Steve.
Julie, Pam, thank you so much for your time today, for the approach that you take to this. Every time we work together personally, I always leave feeling so much more centered. And I think that's an important part of the muscle that we're building when we do this work. I would also, just in closing, I have one or two closing comments or thoughts to kind of pull this together. But as we were going through, I realized that some of the folks on the call might say, this is great for me personally, but how do I get a leader to do this? How does this happen in the workplace? Can we do that? And, it needs to start with creating a safe place for sure, but it's a muscle to build like any other muscle. People don't start running a marathon from never having started to walk. It's one step at a time. So being able to start to practice this within your organization, to be able to ask that curious question, to be able to ask somebody to pause and say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen in the situation that we're talking about right now? Move out of the task part of the job that you're doing to move into, how's this making you feel? Label some of those emotions. So as a leader, we can teach that. And in the training program that we have, we help leaders learn and teach them how to be resilient during these times, and what are those skills to move from being a task manager to being a people manager. So we can have those employees, as we talked about up front, start every day excited and leave accomplished, even in a time when it's really a stressful situation, and having somebody realize that somebody has your back, and you can, and it's okay to take time to get centered so you can be productive, versus those moments of just staring at your computer screen or your desk and being polarized with what should I do next, and having a day where you walk away going, boy, I didn't really feel like I got anything done. If somebody starts with doing this work, it will turn into great productivity at the end of that. And it starts really with having those conversations and being able to have them in an organization in a way that says it's not touchy-feely, it's not something that you just do between friends. It's a business relationship to coach each other on how we're responding to times of stress in the organization. So what you see on the slide here are 4 of the programs that we created in response to people working from home, people feeling stressed. People mentioned earlier about coaching, group coaching. This crisis coaching cohort you see on the screen is a great way for leaders to unpack how are they working together, how are they feeling, what do I need to do for the next 2 weeks so I can stay on the top of my game and unpack those feelings and emotions and get centered and then do the next part of the work. On the next slide here, I just wanted to share with you the 3-part program that we're talking about here. So step 1 are some of these resilient basics. So what you learn there is just a lot of what we talked about today in this model. What I think is really important is what I was just teeing up is applying those in a work environment between a leader and a subordinate, or when a leader can coach a peer. That's where you start to get momentum with this. You know, teaching an individual is great, but helping a leader build into their practice of leading others and using not just, you know, years ago we talked about having a coaching style. Now we're adding to that coaching repertoire, that toolkit, resiliency and well-being coaching tips, and then creating resilient lifelong habits. So people that can daily, you know, build into their life ways in which they show up at work ready to do the work and be charged for that. And it's a muscle and it's a habit like anything else that we do. And this program, as you unpack it, really helps to do that. So hopefully you're thinking about those things within your organization as well. I wanted to share with you in closing, kind of a bit off topic, but is also on topic. We also just recently published a coaching study. So as Julie mentioned earlier, how individual coaching, whether it's a leader coaching somebody on their team, or you use an external coach like somebody from our organization. But we asked folks that we've coached over the last couple of years and did a study of how has coaching impacted how you've led during this coronavirus pandemic. And what we found was startling. Honestly, more than I thought, was 93% of the folks that we studied said that because of my leadership coaching, I am better equipped to utilize new behaviors that I need to respond differently during this pandemic. And you can see the list, this 83% is 83% of those respondents said what it particularly gave me was the time to focus on the most important work. So we all need people around us to help us have well-being and resilience. And that is part of this sharpening the saw part that we talked about. Who is that person that you use? What is that process that you use to be able to get focused to make the best decisions you can make and not let those, monkey brain elements, overtake your cognitive thinking and being able to be sharp and be focused on who you are. And then in closing, our next webinar, which you'll see being published shortly, is something, it's a different topic than this, but also in the same space of developing people, is talking about using 360 feedback. So we think this is a really good time right now for people that are working remotely, where leader and employee roles are changing. What would it look like to do a cost-effective leadership program where it's just 360s, get feedback, debrief those sessions, have people and leaders unpack how they might change from a growth mindset perspective to lead differently. So we're going to talk about what are some of the best tools, practices, processes for you to think about this as something to add into your toolkit. We want to thank you so much for your time today. As always, feel free to call us and brainstorm any questions you have. We hope you keep yourself healthy. We hope you found this to be a productive use of time for you individually, and it inspires you to have conversations within your organization on how you can lead change into the future. Thank you so much, and we look forward to spending more time with you again in a little, and hopefully in another couple weeks with this. And again, call anytime. Julie, Pam, thanks again so much, and we appreciate you all being part of our community. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.